My parents ignored me for 5 years after I married my boss. They reached out after learning about my kids, but their racist views led me to cut ties. I'm married to my former boss. My parents did not take the marriage as well as I'd hoped and ignored me for 5 years, only reaching out after they saw a 5th anniversary Facebook post that mentioned our kids. Do I let them back into my life, or do I ignore them? My husband used to be my boss about 9 years ago. I started working as his assistant, and we spent about 2.5 years ignoring our mutual attraction until we finally gave in. We went to HR, who reassigned me, and everything was strictly above board from the time we began dating. I got pregnant about a year later, and my husband and I decided to get married. Although we had only been dating for about 1.5 years, we knew each other well, loved each other, lived together, and were expecting a baby. We knew how it might look, but I had to leave the company anyway due to problems with my new boss, so we didn't anticipate this causing any issues, except with my parents. They, 62 male, 57 female, have always been overprotective, so I knew they wouldn't like me dating my boss, and I hadn't told them. But I had to tell them if I wanted them at my wedding. We decided to be mostly honest with them about how it was strictly professional until it wasn't, how we went to HR the second it got unprofessional, and how he never took advantage of me. We also explained that we wanted to get married and wanted them there. We did not mention the baby because I felt that giving them that information in addition to everything else all at once would overwhelm them. I was only about 4 months along when the wedding happened, so the bump was easily hidden by a flowy dress. The wedding itself went off without a hitch, and apart from my mother pulling me into the bathroom shortly before the ceremony to ask if I was sure about this, which I confirmed, my parents seemed to take it well. The ceremony and reception were at 2 different venues, and we had to travel from one to the other, but my parents never arrived at the reception. I called them and got ignored, and then my brother called them and they told him they were going home. I don't remember the exact reason they gave, but it amounted to them being tired and uncomfortable. I tried contacting them after the wedding but found that I was blocked on everything except email, which I used to send them a long letter essentially saying that I'm an adult who made an adult choice and I hope they can respect that. 5 years later, I had not heard from my parents since my wedding. My husband and I are not big on social media, but I recently posted something for our 5th anniversary, mentioning our 2 kids and the 3rd on the way. Within a month of making this post, my parents left a voicemail saying they saw the post and, having had no idea they had grandchildren, now want to meet them. I haven't responded, and there have been a few follow-ups since then asking why I haven't. I don't know what to do, but my gut instinct is that 5 years is too long, and this is about the kids, not about them respecting my choices or relationship. However, I can't help but feel that I'm being unfair, and my brother agrees because I told them in my email that if they could learn to respect my choice and my marriage eventually, then we could talk. And now I'm retroactively applying a time limit. Edit, I can't find a way to work this in organically, but my husband is not white. I am, as are my parents. I don't think this is a race thing or that my parents are racist, and neither does my husband. We don't understand why they would want to meet our mixed-race children if they were racist. But this element is still gnawing at me. Should I reach out to them? If I did, how would we go about rebuilding the relationship? Update, October 22nd, 2021. I asked to talk yesterday. We were on Zoom within an hour. It was my parents, me, and my husband. They asked to see the kids, and I said they could see them eventually. Depending on them earning our trust and convincing us they were going to be positive additions to the kids' lives. They asked to start by reading me a letter they claimed to have written on my wedding day. It said that they were uncomfortable with me marrying my former boss as they thought he took advantage of me. So they left between the wedding and reception to avoid a scene. However, they wanted me to know they were there for me despite their issues with him. They added that they would have sent this to me the morning after my wedding. But then I sent my email about them needing to respect my choices, and they were so ashamed they couldn't bring themselves to send theirs. Seeing my anniversary post made them realize how much they've missed in 5 years, and they really don't want to miss any more. I had some questions, like what the big deal was with me marrying my former boss. They said it just wasn't what they had in mind for my wedding day and future spouse. I asked why they even came to the wedding if they didn't support the marriage, and my dad responded that he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle as it was the only chance he'd get. The way it was phrased implied they had intentionally only come to the wedding so he could give me away and always planned to leave halfway. And because he said my daughter and didn't talk to me directly, It was pretty clear he was thinking about my older sister who passed away. My husband caught that too, and said that if they were talking about me, they should address me directly, then added that if they had planned to leave, they should have told us, as we wouldn't have invited them. He also said that waiting 5 years to reach out was going to take more reasons than shame. As a father, he didn't understand how they could ignore their daughter for years or only get back in touch when we had kids. My dad snapped that he wasn't going to take this from an akushi, a slur meaning dark-skinned. My mother immediately tried to run damage control, but I ended the call. They have since messaged me several times, trying to explain that calling my husband a racial slur wasn't indicative of a racist attitude, and he wouldn't have said that in front of the kids, so they should still get to meet them. I've spent 5 years wondering how they were so offended by me marrying my boss that it earned no contact for half a decade. Turns out, they're just racist. It's almost a relief to find out. If it was just the boss thing, I would have sympathy for them, and we might even be able to reconcile. But with this, it's now just a question of whether I'm going to knowingly expose my mixed-race children to a couple of racists, which I'm obviously not going to do. These are people who knew the pain of losing a child and still chose to throw away another child just because she fell in love with someone she truly loves. I'm glad Op protected her kids from the racist grandparents. It has to be hard to find out your parents don't have the character you assumed. Now on to the next story. We aren't invited to my stepdaughter's wedding, and I feel sad for my husband. My husband is a great man and a wonderful father. I have known him for 17 years and have been in a relationship with him for 8 years. He has 2 children by his first wife. They were really young when they got pregnant. He was 20 and I think she was 19. Both were raised in Catholic homes, and both sets of parents pressured them to get married. This was in 1990. His son was born in 1991, and his daughter in 1993. Both being young, stupid, and immature, their marriage ended in 1996. It was a typical custody arrangement. She had primary custody, and he had every other weekend. She came from a family with significant money. When it came time to file for child support, her parents supported her financially so she could cut back her working hours to about 15 hours a week. They paid for one of the best lawyers in our area, and he had no lawyer. This resulted in my husband paying an astronomical amount of money for child support, $800 for 2 kids in 1996. He ended up having to work 3 minimum wage jobs just to support himself and pay child support, but he made it work and still made time for the kids. His ex remarried someone who also had money, and over the years, she and her new husband would take the kids on very expensive trips, multiple trips to Disney, cruises, and fancy vacations halfway across the country. The kids got name brand everything and the latest electronics. My husband couldn't afford any of that, so as the kids got into their teen years, they kind of drifted away from my husband. It didn't help that their mom constantly badmouthed my husband to the kids either. If there were ever a picture of parental alienation in Webster's dictionary, her face would be it. Even now, when we run into her, she is nasty. One of the last functions we ran into her at, my husband asked her how she and her family were doing. Her response was awful. Her parents enable her, her one sister is just like her, but the rest of the family barely tolerates her. I say this from first-hand knowledge, not hearsay. My husband has a somewhat distant but okay relationship with his son. We see them once in a while. My husband calls him at least once a week to check in, and he hears back maybe twice a month. His daughter only speaks to him if she runs into him, us at the grocery store. She will not answer any calls or texts. She does not visit. She literally refuses to have anything to do with my husband. Last December, we ran into her at the grocery store. To be honest, I didn't want to talk to her. I tried to avoid her, but she saw me. She rushed over to me to show me her new engagement ring. The engagement had just happened. So the encounter had nothing to do with me. She just was excited to show off her ring. My husband was with me, and she started talking about the wedding, set for November of this year. She then proceeds to tell my husband that she wants him to walk her down the aisle. I'm sorry, what? I am simultaneously thrilled for my husband and baffled by her request. She literally never wants anything to do with her father. My husband has lamented for years about his lack of relationship with his daughter. He has tried over and over and over to reach out to her, but he is ignored every single time. It was in the last 5 years that I really saw him stop trying. So when she was gushing about him walking her down the aisle, all of his hopes of a relationship with her were rekindled. From last December to now, I reached out to her 3 times asking how the planning was going. I was ignored and left on read all 3 times. He has reached out to her, but he was ignored too. Now, we are about 9 weeks before the wedding, and we have not heard from or seen his daughter since December. There was no bridal shower invite, and there has been no wedding invitation. I ran into her fiance a few weeks ago and asked about the wedding and how it was going. And he immediately looked uncomfortable and changed the subject. I told my husband this week that I'm confident we aren't invited, despite his daughter's initial claim. He pretends to everyone that he doesn't care, but I'm the one behind the scenes who sees the sadness and the hurt in his eyes. I'm the one listening to him lament how much he misses his kids, how much he wants to see them and spend time with them. For the record, my husband also has a 16-year-old son with a second wife. He learned from his mistakes the first time and insisted on 50/50 custody when they split. He still maintains 50/50 custody, and he has a very active role in his youngest son's life. I also have 3 preteen teenage boys from my previous marriage. Their dad abandoned them in 2016, and my husband has stepped in and been a wonderful father figure for my kids. I've known my husband for nearly 2 decades. I know what kind of man he is, and I know what kind of father he is. He doesn't deserve to be treated like this, and it makes me sad for him. I know it's not anything I can ever get involved with, not my kids, not my previous relationship, but I can still be sad for my husband. I wish I had a way to make it hurt a little less for him. Edit to add, I am a professional photographer. When she gushed about the wedding and my husband walking her down the aisle, I saw this as an opportunity for me to help mend the bridge. I offered to photograph her wedding as a wedding gift. She declined and said she wanted me to be able to enjoy the wedding as a guest. We know for a fact we were initially invited,